a charity case situation takes an unexpected turn and bites NASCAR, the US-based motorsports franchise, in the back. The great NASCAR's ins and outs came to light because of a show that exposed the deep and unseen parts of the autosport racing business, from the laborious crew roaming the grounds all the way to management and administration. Look closely as we discover the loud drama that made NASCAR grace the headlines in a not-so-expected way this time. NASCAR, short for National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, is a family-owned US-based sports franchise with a multitude of audiences all over the world. It is a privately owned company which was founded by an American businessman and racing car driver, William Henry Getty France, who was also known as Bill France Sr. or just Big Bill. This happened in the phenomenal year of 1948 as this mega-ranked motorsports organization was brought to existence. It is one of the most watched motorsports shows in the world, which hosts more than 1,000 races each year in the United States, as well as other great nations of the world. In his early days, before the founding of the company, the founder Bill France Sr. saw an opportunity to build a show for auto racing fans, as he noticed people gathering up to watch spontaneous races. Divers would gather around and show off their skills and pride, and people would come to watch. Bill took the liberty of assembling a racing club down in Daytona Beach, in hope that people would come and watch, and his expectation proved accurate as fans started to gather around and watch the self-hired drivers who did it for fun. What started as a competition of proud drivers grew into a much organized series of events as organizers chipped in sums of money and bet on their desired drivers, who were later on payouts divided amongst the winners. There were some complaints since the promoters took the kill and drivers were left empty-handed. Later on, in February 1948, the company was founded after Bill realized that this was a success. It also created a platform for car companies to promote their products for many fans of the motor and auto sports. After the founding manager Bill France Sr., his son James Carl France, also named Jim France, assumed the top rank in the high table. In August 2018, Jim France took the role of interim CEO and chairman of the great NASCAR. Upon the arrest of his nephew Brian France, he was faced with an incident with the law and was arrested on suspicion that he was driving under the influence in Sag Harbor. Jim's reputation took a blow due to this incident and was stripped of the interim part of his title and continued as the CEO and chairman of the company. The company held races in several divisions, which were collectively referred to as the ladder due to their stepping up kind of appearance. These are the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and finally the Truck Series. On the top of the racing divisions, the Cup Series of NASCAR serves as the main beacon for spectators and motorsports fans.
Had trouble off of 2, and then ultimately whatever happened to the car.
Xfinity Series follows as the second highest level of professional competition in NASCAR.
Allgaier working his way up for the lead, but then it was the 0-0 of Cole Custer.
As compared to the Cup Series, it hosts fewer races and the money is also lower. Unlike the case in earlier seasons of the competitions, Cup Series drivers were noted to also pop up in Xfinity Series races, using them to warm up their way to the Cup Series. The third division, known as the Craftsman Truck Series, or just the Truck Series, features trucks modified for the racing experience. And also, for those who have found the higher 2 series of NASCAR to be somewhat tough, this Craftsman Truck Series presents a lighter experience. NASCAR has well over 100,000 fans that come on Saturday nights to see the best racing in the world. Unlike any other sports fans in the world, NASCAR fans have such commitment to the sport that they gather in a phenomenal manner. Moms and dads bring their little ones along with their whole families to the great gathering of the racing events. Often they even camp out for days on end, waiting for the races to start and socializing with other fans about their favorite moments and also their favorite drivers, whom they came to watch race in their stock cars. This experience comes as a fun and enjoyable chain of moments which they share with their friends and loved ones, as they have a great time swallowed in passion within the crowd that sings their song of cheer. Steve Phelps is the Chief Marketing Officer at NASCAR, who oversees sales and marketing and communications. In his 16 years at NASCAR, Phelps also served in the roles of Chief Operating Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. As a child, Steve loved all sports. He went to a lot of NASCAR races as a kid growing up in Vermont. In addition to being in sports his entire career, Steve also had athletic tendencies in his youth. He stayed local for college, and while earning his degree in economics at the UVM, he was balancing the classroom with competition as a middle-distance runner on the track team. Phelps has a bachelor's degree from the University of Vermont and an MBA from Boston College. He worked for Wasserman Media Group and spent 14 years in corporate marketing at the National Football League. By the time he joined NASCAR in 2005, it was a very significant year for the company, which was the year when television ratings, sponsor participation, and attendance skyrocketed. Later on in 2018, he was appointed president of NASCAR and currently oversees all operations, competition, and commercial for the auto racing sanctioning body, including the management of 15 racetrack facilities and the International Motorsports Association, IMSA, sports car series.
Sports grandest stage, Daytona International Speedway.
Steve Phelps is married with 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. His kids have a love for sports and like to spend their breaks in environments that involve ball games and physical activities. Steve travels from his home in New York down to Daytona Beach, where he stays foremost on the weekdays, from Monday morning all the way through Thursday night. His family miss him while he's gone for work, since he'd be gone for most of the week. The kids are sometimes disappointed since he mostly misses school events and functions at different times. His wife explains that the kids miss him and wish he was there in some milestone moments of their childhood. She also claims that that is the way things are at the moment, and that it is all working out. He also misses his kids a lot, and somehow feels like his work-life balance can be labeled as not very pleasant, but he claims it's part of the sacrifice. After the climb in 2005, there was a major difficulty that came about, along with the recession, which happened 3 years later in 2008. This affected the company in many different ways. The waves keep hitting. And due to the recent recession within the past 2 years, he has noticed that there has been a significant drop in attendance of fans, around 15% to be precise, and a 20% drop in merchandise over the same time period. As it is a major concern for the NASCAR family, there has been a certain development discussed around the administrative table. They came upon the notion of going deep into the company and trying to learn if there is any idea that can be gathered to help in the process of restoring the company's loose threads and making it a better fit for fans and teams. Steve was asked by Brian France and Mike Helton to go undercover, as they may be too visible to be able to do that. The possible opportunity of getting an inside look into the company's deeper structure, race teams, and behind-the-scenes elements was also seen as productive for him as the CMO of Nascar, as he is believed to gather applicable information and help the sport grow by pulling it back to record levels. While Undercover Steve would be posing as Kevin Thomas from Burlington, Vermont, under the cover story that he's a NASCAR superfan that won a contest allowing him to work alongside employees in the racing industry. The project ends as the employees would be called back to HQ to evaluate his performance in the fields and if he is actually worth collaborating with.
They will be called back to headquarters at the end of the week to evaluate my performance to determine if I am NASCAR material.
Only a week away from a race at Daytona, he heads to one of the premier teams in all of NASCAR, Hendrick Motorsports Concord, whose pit crews have recorded the fastest pit stop times in the sport, as fast as 13 seconds and even faster sometimes. The head of the pit crew, Mark Martin, introduces him to his pit crew members one morning. In the conference room, he is introduced to a man named Deion Williams, a retired carrier, a spot in the pitting crew. Heading out into the field, Deion shows him a team of actively training gentlemen, going through intense reps and endurance-building physical activities. These people train like professional athletes and give it all they have. This is not realized by the public and the fans. The main focus of the parking lot workout session is to get them used to the heat, since it would be fiery hot on the racing fields and in their fire suits. Kevin observes that the driver is only as good as the pit crew, since this racing sport is indeed more of a team sport than it is an individual one. Kevin joins the crew in the parking lot, and they start putting him through their routines. After an exhausting warm-up and draining physical exercises, they are off to practice on cars. He observes as they do their job. The car rushes into place, and they assume their spots around the car to quickly change the tires and send it on its way. He observes them for the first 30 minutes, and then is asked to take his palace in the crew for the practice runs. Deion orients him on how he holds the tire and which hand he uses to push it into place. Kevin looks a bit frightened as Dion demonstrates what he had just told him. He goes on for a few rounds trying to put the tire in place and as fast as he is expected to, but the team doesn't seem to be satisfied with his performance. It is a tough job that requires speed and strength, along with high resistance to the burning hot weather of the day. On top of that, the weight of the tire, which the crew doesn't seem to appreciate due to their strong arms, was part of the workload. By the end of the practice session, Dion had finally found a place for Kevin and his team. Due to his performance, he was probably going to end up in the water bottle duties to the driver. In what seemed like a break in between practice, Kevin is engaged in a conversation with Dion about his background and his family. He learns that Dion was in football before he joined the crew at Nascar, and that he had no idea of handling anything mechanical. He was also laughed at for claiming to work for NASCARs, since his friends and family had no idea what it was at the time. He claims to be the first African American to ever wear the Jeff Gordon fire suit. Now, he has acceptance in his social circle due to NASCAR's renowned fame. As their conversation progresses, Kevin learns that Dion is at the verge of concluding his stay in the spot. For it's only 10 to 15 years on the job, then you're too tired to go on, and there are younger guys on the watch waiting for him to mess up and jump into his spot. He has a wife and 2 kids, and another one due in September. Kevin understands his concern of losing his job eventually, for he has a family and kids to take care of, and a 3rd child on the way. Kevin finally appreciates Dion's work and expresses his gratitude for having met him as a fan and seen him in action. Impressed and touched by his personality, Kevin concludes that it is guys like him that need to be observed, and that it was definitely a situation that he needs to take a closer look at. To gain the full experience, Steve posing as Kevin is staying in an RV the way an average NASCAR fan would if they came here. And on this day, Kevin is going to be working in facility operations and trying to get sense for what happens to prepare for a race. He is introduced to the facility operations officer Glenn in the preparation department. Glenn, Daytona's main sign guy, welcomes Kevin, a fan who wants to know the race preparations, yet in another perspective. Out on the racing grounds of the Daytona, they start painting the asphalt in black and white checkers and plating the sidewalls. With the heat and the steep slopes of the racing roads, the pressure of the work increases. As they proceed with the work, Glenn explains to him how the numbers of temperatures displayed on TV screens actually mean real when in person. A good center and balance is important while working on the steep slopes of the racing fields. Glenn explains how the job has grown on him, and he enjoys the drama on the fields as the smoke from the tires whirls out and the car bodies come to smash with each other. As they try to plaster one piece of the wall posters, it slides down the incline and they have to go get it repainted. As they socialize, Kevin learns that Glenn is married to a wife and has 2 kids, boys named Daniel and Christopher. Daniel was diagnosed with leukemia at 11, and things had been different since then. He even missed the whole 6th grade. He gets chemo every 2 weeks, and it hasn't been quite as easy as going over to the hospital for meds and checkups. There were good moments and bad moments. In some of his visits for checkups, his count would come up wrong and they would be asked to stay there for a couple of days. Steve in Kevin's shoes points out the positive energy he read from him all day and the work ethic that was purely motivating, and asks Glenn how he does that within all this pain and heavy load in his heart. Glenn goes over and mouths one of the most motivational lines of the entire episode by saying that in the hard and tough times of the season in his son's life, he is faced with a choice to become mad at life and hate it, or be a leader, strong for his kids and carry on with life. Yet he continues to explain that it is not as easy as sugarcoating it with nice words of courage. There is the constant burden that is always just sitting in the back of his wife's and his minds with every bill that comes.
Just gotta be strong for your kids.
That's great.
But it's something that's just a burden that's always in the back of our minds. When we get another bill, you go, oh, how are we gonna do this?
After he is returned to his trailer, Steve reflects that Glenn is going through a tough emotional hardship where he wrestles with his own ability and courage to go forward. And Steve, also being a dad, understands the kind of psychological pressure Glenn's situation could inflict on a man of his position. He even thinks that in addition to keeping his head up high and hands and feet constantly grinding, he would also do a lot of praying as well. In his next undercover assignment, Kevin meets Cindy, a concession manager, her mother Rachel, and a younger brother Tom. They are volunteers who have taken a spot in the Daytona International driveway to fundraise for the local high school cheerleading team, where her 3 daughters cheer. The company sets them up with the stand and gives them the spot for their products. they sell their foods for the profit of which they get to keep 10%. Meanwhile, the fans who pass by are well supplied with the foods and drinks they need to head back and enjoy the motorsports show. In the back, Tom shows Kevin how they make them in the back. As the family cooks and prepares the food in the shade, Kevin is made to attract customers, which he instantly fails, despite his position as a marketing manager. He was, however, impressed by the energy and beaconing excitement of the team.
Hey guys, how are you? Anything to drink?
Come on, let's go, hustle!
And finally had a hold of the skill of attracting customers, which he referred to as infectious. T.Y. Norris, the executive VP and general manager of Michael Waltrip's racing team, introduces Kevin to Scott Swift, a tire specialist of Team 00 on David Reutemann's car. Scott explains to Kevin the tight schedules on his calendar that he sometimes misses celebrating the 4th of July with his family. Then Scott takes him through the process of checking the tires and getting readings on them to make them work just right on the road. As an employee of NASCAR, Scott wishes to have his family come over and enjoy the races sometimes. But that is difficult, as there may be a high-profile fan that may have booked and the family may be counted out. He says he would love it if he had that privilege. On the racing field, Kevin sees the teams coming together to serve their candidates in the race. There was Dion's team changing tires and Scott providing tires for the team. All coming together to help make the race a success was a spectacular sight for the chief of marketing in the fields.
So you've probably seen a lot of changes in 15 years.
Yeah, some of them good, some of them bad.
The employees and staff were summoned to NASCAR's corporate headquarters to evaluate and give comments to their new superfan friend. Steve, who was undercover as Kevin, now loses his disguise to meet the people he met in the fields. They are told that they are there to evaluate his performance on the field, but they were there for a whole other reason. Steve comes out dressed in his office looks and reintroduces himself to the employees that wait for him in the next room. He tells them that they're there for more than what they aspire to do in that office. First is Dion, who is acknowledged for how diligently he's been working with the tire changing team, and he was offered another place in a new team called an industry council, where he can share his ideas about what things need to be improved in the company. He was happy with the idea and took the job right away, and he was offered a job at NASCAR. Next was Scott, who was offered to fly in his family for any race of his choice with all expenses paid. Also, the same opportunity was extended for his crew and their families. Cindy and Tom were also appreciated for the great efforts they showed in their work. Cindy was presented with roughly $10,000 for the cheerleaders team she mentioned on the field, and Tom was sent to the championship race with all expenses paid. Glenn was also appreciated for his back-breaking job, which he does relentlessly. Steve mentioned his son, Daniel, who has leukemia, and showed a gesture of kindness by presenting him with a helmet signed by all the drivers who participated in the Coke Zero 400 who participated in the previous weekend.
I really want to see Daniel get better.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
He also offered that for any out-of-pocket expenses not covered by the Speedway, NASCAR was to pay for them until Daniel was better. This came as a very touching moment for Glenn, and he was overwhelmed by it. The episode ends by Steve Phelps showing up on stage in front of the Daytona employees, giving a speech and showing them funny footage from his stay out there. After this episode of Undercover Boss, the great NASCAR fell under major speculation, which led to different controversies, including disputes over NASCAR's way of handling safety measures and issues related to its diversity initiatives. This happened when Daytona's main sign guy at the racing grounds was offered financial support regarding his son's illness. Although it may not be directly connected to Brophy's appearance on the show, these controversies that came to light greatly cast a shadow over the organization and its leadership. The show portrayed multiple weaknesses of the company in its insufficient concern for the diversified working force breaking their backs day and night for the success of the races. People all over the nation, and also other parts of the world, show up to enjoy and satisfy their autosports desire. One of the criticisms of NASCAR is the fact that the cars involved in the race are not as stock as they used to be in the first days of the company. Present-day NASCAR vehicles are not as original and stock as they used to be. Some respond to the situation, pointing out to the scarcity of energy energy and gas, and that gas was not as easy to find these days as it used to be before. On another note, spectators also criticized the lack of diversity in the cars present in the races. More or less similar cars and racing techniques are observed, and this might have contributed to the drop in attendance of the fans. The inclusion of technology in the new cars has somehow pulled the whole sports experience back to the ground, instead of boosting its performance. Other observers bring the dominance of the France family into consideration as a cause for the drop in performance in the company and its decline in reputation. They are accused by some spectators that they have family over profession, which can be so damaging for the show business. The dominance of the family in multiple positions of the company may have blocked opportunities for competitive and better performing personnel who may have had newer and better ways of progress than the one in place. Due to some changes made by the company, some fan bases have felt alienated from the race and tracks by NASCAR's decision to change its image to appeal to a more mainstream audience. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to not miss the next upload. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.